November 22nd, 1987, in Chicago, a Sunday night. Families are watching TV. Kids are settled in front of PBS to watch Doctor Who, and then without warning, the screen goes black. And when it comes back, there's a figure wearing a Max Headroom mask swaying in front of the corrugated metal, and for 90 seconds, this masked intruder hijacked Chicago's airwaves. He referenced WGN sportscaster Chuck Swirsky, held up a Pepsi can, waved what appeared to be a sex toy at the camera, and then exposed his bare buttocks while being spanked with a fly swatter by an unseen woman, and then he was gone. Doctor Who returned mid-sentence, and the culprits were never found, as the case remains unsolved. Now, why am I starting this video about cartoon secrets with a broadcast hijacking? Because that incident, that violation of the airwaves, and that intrusion into living rooms across Chicago represents something fundamental about television. We trust it, we let it into our homes, and we let our children sit in front of it, absorbing whatever comes through. And sometimes, what comes through is not what we think it is. Let's talk about the Candle Cove. In 2009, a user on a forum called Net Nostalgia started a thread about a children's show they remembered from the 1970s. Other users chimed in. They remembered it too. And the show featured a girl named Janice and her imaginary adventures with the Marionette Pirates. But as the thread continued, their memories got darker. They mentioned a villainous character known as the Skin Taker, a skeleton pirate who wore clothing made of children's skin, and an episode that consisted entirely of the puppets screaming. The final post in the thread was a mother responding to her son. He'd been talking about Candle Cove too, and she checked what he'd been watching, and it was just static. For 30 minutes, her son had been sitting in front of a television showing nothing but dead air, completely transfixed. Candle Cove was fiction, a creepypasta written by Chris Robb, inspired by a satirical article in The Onion about a man still having nightmares about a disturbing children's show. But here's what makes it so effective. We believe it could exist, because we all remember shows that felt wrong, episodes that shouldn't have aired, moments that traumatized us in ways our parents never noticed. Sci-Fi turned Candle Cove into the first season of an anthology series called Channel Zero, centering on child psychologists investigating mysterious 1980s disappearances connected to a nightmarish children's television program. Now the line between fiction and memory gets blurred because people started claiming they remembered the real Candle Cove. They described episodes, shared screenshots. The creepypasta had been a collective of false memory. Now that's the power of television. It can implant itself so deeply that we can't tell what we actually saw from what we were told we saw. But let's talk about something that actually aired, something that traumatized an entire generation. Courage the Cowardly Dog's King Ramses' Curse episode is still considered one of the most disturbing pieces of children's television ever created. Now here's the messed up part. It unexpectedly aired at the end of the VHS for Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders in 2000. When the credits stopped rolling, the episode began without warning, immediately introducing unsuspecting children to the horror of King Ramses. Ramses appeared in the 3D animation while everything else was 2D, with tattered garments flowing the strange tentacle-like things that are coming out of his ears, and his voice, distorted, layered, inhuman, repeated the same phrase, "Return the slab or suffer my curse." Now the creator, John R. Dilworth, initially came up with the voice when he and his brother were trying to scare their mom, and they succeeded. And then they used it to scare millions of children. And at the end of each episode, Eustace gets turned into a part of the slab itself, still screaming, trapped forever in the artifact that's returned to the pyramid, where it will remain for the rest of time. That's not a typical cartoon ending, that's psychological horror. Kids who watch this are adults now, and they still talk about it online. Reddit threads, YouTube comments, with one saying, "I'm 28 and I still can't hear 'Return the Slab' without feeling sick." With another one saying, "This episode gave me actual nightmares for years. My parents thought cartoons were safe, but Courage wasn't safe. It was never meant to be." Creator John Dilworth wanted to capture the feeling of childhood fear, that irrational terror you experience when you're young, and the world doesn't make sense. He succeeded, and maybe a little too well. But let's go deeper, and let's talk about the Rugrats. Now, there is a theory, one of the most widespread fan theories in cartoon history, that circulated on creepypasta and Reddit, claiming all the babies are figments of Angelica's imagination. Tommy was stillborn. Chucky died with his mother in a car accident. The DeVilles had an abortion. So Angelica created twins since she couldn't figure out the gender. And according to this theory, Angelica suffered from schizophrenia, and the only real baby was Dill, whom she couldn't control, so she hit him repeatedly, causing brain damage. And the theory concludes with teenage Angelica dying of a drug overdose at 13. Now, is that real? No. The creators debunked it, but here's why it's spread. It fits Tu's obsessive toy making for his dead son, Chaz's constant anxiety, and the fact that the babies can talk to each other, but not adults. And once you see it through this lens, you can't unsee it. And that's the insidious thing about these theories. They take something innocent and show you the horror that was always there, just beneath the surface. But sometimes the horror isn't just a theory. Sometimes it's real. And sometimes the people who created your favorite shows were monsters. In 1994, a 13-year-old girl named Robin Bird sent John Kricfalusi, creator of Ren and Stimpy, a video of herself talking about her drawings and her dream of working in animation. Kricfalusi wrote back and would go on to groom Bird for a relationship, eventually having a physical sexual relationship with her while she was still a minor. Another teenage fan, Katie Rice, began corresponding with Kricfalusi via AOL when she was just about 14, receiving inappropriate messages and experiencing repeated sexual harassment. Kricfalusi's predatory behavior towards underage girls was described as an open secret within animation, so open that it was briefly referenced in a book about Ren and Stimpy. The industry people knew, and they did nothing. Robin Bird later wrote, "He ruined a good bit of my childhood and my early adulthood, gave me PTSD, and forced me to change careers, putting my life 10 years or more behind." And when you watch Ren and Stimpy now, the show that revolutionized animation, that influenced SpongeBob and Adventure Time, you're watching something created by a man who was actively preying on children who admired his work. That context poisons everything. And it's not just him. Look at the Max Headroom incident again. To successfully hijack 2 separate television stations in one night requires sophisticated broadcast equipment and expert technical knowledge. The perpetrators appear to be young and possibly teenagers with access to expensive transmitters, and one theory suggests it was an inside job. Disgruntled employees at WGN, possibly related to layoffs in the months before the incident, when the FCC in DC got a tip about a company where the hackers may have pre-taped the video. The Chicago office refused to follow up on it. Someone got away with violating broadcast law, exposing themselves to children, and creating one of the most disturbing pieces of footage in television history. The statute of limitations have already passed, and they could confess now without consequences. But they haven't. So they're still out there, possibly, probably watching people discuss what they did, enjoying the fact that they got away with it. Now here's what all of this means. The television you grew up on wasn't safe. The cartoons weren't really innocent, and the people making them also sometimes weren't always good. Courage the Cowardly Dogs deliberately traumatized children as an artistic choice. Rugrats can be reinterpreted as a story about death and mental illness. Ren and Stimpy was created by a predator, and several other modern ones like Nickelodeon with a lot of background history. Now the list can go on, and these are just the things we know about. How many other shows have dark secrets we haven't discovered? And how many creators were doing things behind the scenes that would horrify us? How many episodes were designed to fuck with kids in ways that parents never noticed? And you know what the scariest part is? We're doing it again, right now. There's streaming platforms that are pumping out content faster than anyone can monitor it. Kids are watching YouTube channels run by algorithms and TikToks made by strangers, apps that track every second of viewing data to feed them more, and more. And parents trust it in the same way our parents trusted Saturday morning cartoons. The medium has changed, and that's just the way it is.